They went on this trip to the UK. There was a bit of will they, won't they? Harry goes by himself, and then suddenly Meghan Markle with the kids in they trot as well. But there have been some reports that the family reunion that they had with the King and the Queen may have not gone as planned for Meghan. There are some suggestions that it probably wasn't warm and fuzzy. I can't imagine why.
Sussexes only will talk to people who repeat their own narrative.
Yes.
And who they can control. So the idea that you could get the truth from the Sussexes is contradictory.
Yes, they met. Yes, that was against William's wishes. But there was no sense that I'm getting that Charles laid out the red carpet for Harry.
This is the sort of meeting that the King does with strangers. It's not the sort of meeting that he does with loved ones.
They run out of ideas. They can't really more work for Netflix or Spotify or any of the main streamers. And their finances are basically in jeopardy over the long term.
This man, I think, will be asking Dad for a little bit more money very, very quickly. I only see bad things on the horizon.
We get to Rob Shooting's new reporting over Prince William's reaction to that. He also alleges that King Charles is even shocked. Well, I'm not sure how shocked King Charles is, to be honest, given he's made this offer for Prince Harry to stay at Buckingham Palace. I think these days Charles just ignores what Harry is doing because he doesn't want to know the reality of quite how low his son, his youngest, has stooped.
Prince Harry's latest royal reunion was supposed to signal progress, but Tom Bower saw something completely different. Instead of treating the meeting as a hopeful family moment, the royal biographer used one of his harshest descriptions yet, calling Harry poison for the monarchy. That accusation hit at a particularly sensitive moment because King Charles had reportedly just made a major move toward rebuilding contact with his younger son. After years of tension, Charles was said to have welcomed Harry, Meghan, Archie and Lilibet to Highgrove for a private family meeting, with Queen Camilla reportedly there as well. According to reports surrounding the visit, they spent roughly an hour together behind closed doors. There were no cameras waiting for them and no big public appearance afterward. The understanding was reportedly simple. Whatever happened inside Highgrove was supposed to remain private. But soon afterward, stories about the reunion began appearing in major publications, and royal commentators quickly started questioning where those details came from and who benefited from having them out there.
Meghan Markle breaks her agreement with King Charles and Buckingham Palace to leak to her friends at People magazine less than a week after that promised meeting with Charles and Queen Camilla. Prince Harry has in the past directly emailed People magazine. We know that People magazine effectively operates as like the house journal for the Sussexes. And we know that Meghan Markle wanted it to be known to the world that the choreography of this meeting was nothing to do with...
Some coverage even brought Prince William back into the wider family drama, turning what looked like a quiet reconciliation attempt into another round of royal speculation. And that is where Bower's criticism becomes important. His argument is not simply that Harry has disappointed his family. Bower appears to believe the repeated cycle of private royal moments becoming public talking points has created a much deeper trust problem. The circumstances also made Charles's reported invitation significant. The king has continued carrying out royal responsibilities while undergoing treatment, yet he was apparently willing to create another opportunity for family contact.
He, Meghan, and the children had the secret meeting with King Charles and Queen Camilla at Highgrove. However, there are now reports coming out from people like Page 6 saying it wasn't so warm and fuzzy as, perhaps Harry and Meghan would like us to think. So what happened?
Well, I'm not quite sure how they could have expected it to be really warm and fuzzy, considering all of the toing and froing and the ins and outs that there was in the run-up to this meeting. And of course, there was all sorts of secrecy, getting them in and getting them out. So the whole thing would have been a real sort of event rather than the sort of family reunion that you and I would be used to.
Reports also suggested he had spent very limited time with Archie and Lilibet in recent years, making any reunion involving the grandchildren especially notable. Royal reporters themselves appeared surprised that the Highgrove meeting happened at all. There was also debate over how news of the visit became public. GB News commentary suggested information about the meeting came from palace circles rather than Harry and Meghan's side, creating the impression that Charles wanted his willingness to reconnect to be known. If accurate, that would make the visit more than a hidden family gathering. It could also be read as a public signal that the king had not completely shut the door on Harry. Yet the reported arrival was anything but flashy.
Meghan Markle felt humiliated on Prince Harry's most recent UK trip, and that the trip turned into a nightmare, forcing Markle and her children to return home to California earlier than they had hoped.
They're against it. They've been hugely damaged by the Sussexes. They're in no mood to forgive the Sussexes for all the lies they've spewed out about them.
And Charles asked them to keep their mouths shut, especially about their meeting. But a lot of people would be really upset if that did come to fruition in the UK specifically. I don't think taxpayers want to pay for the Harry and Meghan circus. No. And it's likely very frustrating for them to see that King Charles just met with.
Accounts claimed Harry and his family entered the estate discreetly in a darkened vehicle, with the visit supposedly kept so low-key that their presence could be mistaken for an ordinary trip around the grounds. Think about how unusual that image is. A king reportedly trying to reconnect with his own son, while everyone involved takes extraordinary steps to avoid turning the moment into a spectacle. Former royal butler Grant Harold described the meeting as a major win for Harry, and from a public image perspective, it is easy to understand that argument. After years of separation from royal life, simply being welcomed back into Charles's private home could carry enormous symbolic value. That is also central to Bauer's broader criticism. He has repeatedly argued that Harry and Meghan benefit from maintaining some connection to the monarchy because their royal history remains deeply tied to public interest in them.
I think at the heart of this really is a family. Forget the fact they're members of the royal family. The king is, 77 years old now. He's undergoing cancer treatment. He's been desperate to see his grandchildren for a long time. There's been quite a lot of security concerns, but Harry clearly saw it was the right time to host kind of a private family tea.
In that view, being seen as accepted by Charles again offers something money alone cannot easily buy. Renewed proximity to the institution that made Harry one of the most recognisable figures in the world. Whether the meeting represented genuine family progress or simply a temporary easing of tensions remains unclear. But Bauer's explosive poison remark shows just how divided royal commentary remains over Harry's return to the family orbit. Royal commentator Rupert Bell pushed the criticism even further, describing the situation as desperate. And when you look at how quickly the mood reportedly changed, it is easy to see why this reunion became such a heated talking point.
It's in a very secluded, very private location, so it just made sense.
Well, I think it did make sense, and it was a coup for Prince Harry to get that face-to-face meeting with his father, with Meghan back on royal property, and a face-to-face between the king and his grandchildren. Quite the moment for the...
For a brief moment, the story looked almost hopeful. Charles had reportedly opened Highgrove to Harry, Meghan, Archie and Lilibet, giving the family a rare chance to spend time together away from cameras. After years of public tension, some royal watchers wondered whether this could finally mark a turning point. But the biggest expectation surrounding the meeting was reportedly privacy. This was supposed to stay behind closed doors, not become another chapter in the public Sussex versus royal saga. Then coverage began appearing in People and the New York Times, offering details and interpretations of the reunion. Some commentary portrayed Meghan as hurt by the continuing family tensions, while Prince William was once again pulled into the wider discussion about why reconciliation remained so difficult. The timing immediately raised eyebrows. Two major American publications were covering similar themes around the same period, and critics began questioning whether somebody close to the situation had been talking. That does not prove Meghan personally provided anything, but for commentators already suspicious of how private royal stories reach the press, it looked familiar.
Intelligent. He's very uneducated. His interests are very limited. Emotionally, he is more unstable than his father. And I don't think he is able to rationally work out his own position in this.
They cannot be trusted. You cannot do business with these people. Now, it's my understanding that King Charles was very clear about the ground rules for the Highgrove House gathering, which I'm told was barely an hour in length. And the rules were very clear. No photos, no publicity, no interviews.
Mark Dolan described this broader behaviour as sticking to the letter of the law, but not necessarily respecting its spirit. Biographer Andrew Loney used an even sharper word: leverage. That accusation goes straight to the heart of the controversy. Critics believe access to the royal family can become valuable public currency for Harry and Meghan, especially when private encounters generate headlines afterward. Supporters could argue the press would investigate a reunion this significant regardless. But skeptics see a pattern where personal royal moments repeatedly become part of the public narrative. Royal author Robert Jobson was also sceptical, suggesting publicity surrounding the meeting was only a matter of time. Dolan went further with the blunt claim: you cannot do business with these people.
So Meghan couldn't resist, could she? She just couldn't help herself, bending the rules with a huge photo drop on her Instagram, publicising her UK return. She had to show off. She had to flex her muscles. She had to send a very clear message. I am back. I'm the Duchess with a capital D, and I'm an English royal princess all over again. And this is just the beginning.
Those are opinions, not established facts, but they show how badly trust has reportedly deteriorated around Harry and Meghan. Even a reunion that might normally be viewed as positive quickly became another argument over privacy, loyalty, and who controls the story. Then another issue entered the conversation: security. For years, Harry has publicly argued that security concerns make bringing his family to Britain difficult.
Can we kick off with Prince Harry last night at this Time 100 event? So surely now, Joe, tell me if I'm wrong, but surely we now have proof that he can fly in and out of the UK, sight unseen, no paparazzi pictures, no security troubles whatsoever. So what's his issue?
Well, I think that'll probably be a big issue for them because they do love a controversy because it boosts their brand, it boosts their numbers. But the reality is, you summed it up brilliantly in that intro. But, you know, this has been a fiasco, it's been a circus.
That dispute has been central to his legal battle over protection arrangements and has often been discussed when questions arise about Archie and Lilibet visiting the UK. Yet this reported trip immediately gave critics something new to challenge him with. Meghan and the children apparently came to Britain, visited Highgrove, and left without any publicly reported security incident.
I think we've had enough of this sort of boy child, this man child. That, you know, his performance on that podcast, talking about his grooming, was really, you might give him, forgive him,
or shitting people shitting themselves on a highway. It's the worst thing I've ever seen, Jobbo. I'm not exaggerating.
I think she is a person who's done huge damage to the royal family, has been deeply, deeply inaccurate on many issues, and is of absolutely no value either to the royal family or society. But she just sucks from it. She takes from it and exploits it and profits.
Former royal butler Grant Harold highlighted how smoothly the visit appeared to happen. That does not automatically prove Harry's broader security concerns are baseless. A carefully planned private visit to a royal residence is very different from travelling freely around Britain, and the security arrangements surrounding the reported reunion have not been fully established publicly. Still, critics seized on the contrast. Jobson has publicly questioned the scale of the threat facing Harry, while Bell characterised the security argument in extremely strong terms, including calling it a red herring and using the word blackmail. Those are Bell's descriptions, not confirmed conclusions about Harry's motives. But after years of security being presented as a major obstacle to family visits, the Highgrove reunion gave royal commentators a fresh reason to ask whether the situation is really as impossible as it has sometimes sounded. And this is where the Highgrove reunion starts looking less like Charles giving in and more like the king setting very clear boundaries. Both Rupert Bell and Grant Harold circled around the same idea, with Harold suggesting Charles may have effectively been calling the Sussexes bluff. The message, in that interpretation, was simple. If Harry wanted his children to spend time with their grandfather, Charles was willing to make that happen, but under controlled conditions. His home, his arrangements, no cameras, and as little public spectacle as possible.
Previous examples show that they just can't resist leaking stories and trying to leverage this contact. I think the king was in a difficult position because I think he would have seemed pretty callous if he hadn't agreed to see his grandchildren. So I think he did the sort of held the moral high ground, did the dignified thing. And if they choose to abuse that trust, it's not going to reflect very well on them.
Harry does hard work for Meghan. Yes, he does. He tries to please her. He wants to make her happy. happy, but she's a woman who doesn't actually happy easily, if ever, because she always wants more and more. Nothing is good enough.
Harold noted that Charles has a deep connection to Highgrove and feels comfortable there. That made it an obvious location for a sensitive family meeting. But critics also argued the successful visit raised fresh questions about Harry's long-running security concerns. They pointed toward other senior royals, including Princess Anne and Prince William, who regularly carry out public duties under established security arrangements. Harold described the situation as egg on the face for Harry, although one private visit to a protected royal residence does not settle the broader debate over what security Harry and his family may require elsewhere. But then Angela Levin introduced another explosive claim. According to the royal commentator, the reunion allegedly came with requests or conditions from the Sussex side. Levin even suggested there were preferences about who should be present, including an alleged desire for Queen Camilla not to join the meeting. There is no public confirmation that Meghan or Harry actually issued such a demand, so that claim needs to stay exactly where it belongs.
Well, Meghan is furious because she hasn't done everything she wanted. When they knew they were going to come to the UK and London, she sent a list of what she wanted done for her at Buckingham Palace. Can you believe that? But they didn't go to a palace. They went to a home, and she didn't get what she wanted. Both of them had demanding no Camilla, no Queen. They don't like her, so they didn't want her in.
A lot of royal family members in a pretty small space. They all like that part of southern Gloucestershire. So there have been no security issues. So that's why the security is the ultimate red herring. It's blackmailing from the Sussexes to say, look, we don't feel safe. Well, this visit, obviously, they've been going around. There will have always been a level of security for the Sussexes. So that's why the security issue is a red herring and now needs to be, now she's back, she can't use that anymore as an excuse for coming to this.
Still, it became another major talking point because Camilla reportedly did attend. Levin portrayed Meghan as furious, claiming she had not gotten everything she wanted from the arrangement. Again, that is Levin's interpretation rather than something Meghan has publicly confirmed, but it added another layer to speculation surrounding what happened behind those Highgrove doors. And Camilla's presence sparked its own debate. Robert Jobson has described her as the King's Rottweiler, meaning someone fiercely protective of Charles, while Mark Dolan suggested her role may have been more important than simply joining a family conversation. Some commentators wondered whether Charles wanted another trusted person in the room because relations with Harry had become so fragile. If that interpretation is accurate, it paints an uncomfortable picture. A father reportedly seeing his grandchildren after years apart, yet still feeling the need to make sure someone else witnessed the conversation.
Camilla went to the Harry and Meghan reunion because the king needed a witness to make sure that they couldn't lie about what happened and that they couldn't lie about what was said. That's how low the trust is. So if Harry thinks he's home and hosed with Charles, good luck with that. But the bottom line is that they stuck within the rules. But Meghan gets a picture of Archie and Lily, an extension of her brand, extension of her identity, and it's in England and it's at the Diana estate.
Absolutely. And that's why Highgrove's so perfect. I mean, I said the other day it's possible that because he loves Highgrove and he feels very safe at Highgrove, and you've got the beautiful gardens, and quite often in the afternoon he'll go and take his tea in the gardens or have a bit of downtime in the gardens. So I could almost visualise that's where this meeting took place, in the beautiful surroundings of the Cotswolds countryside at Highgrove.
That is not proof Charles expected trouble, and Buckingham Palace has not publicly framed Camilla's presence that way. But the fact royal commentators even considered that possibility shows just how deep the trust problem has become. Years of interviews, memoir revelations, competing media narratives, and private family disputes becoming public have changed the atmosphere around any Harry reunion. What might once have been an ordinary conversation over tea now gets examined for who attended, who knew beforehand, and what appeared in the press afterward. Dolan even joked that you would want to count the silverware afterward, a deliberately exaggerated line reflecting just how sceptical some commentators have become. Then came another strange development involving Harry's accommodation.
Don't get to allegedly be setting up pap shots and leaking, and then on the other hand want to claim your privacy has been breached and you are the victim. The only victim in this case is Harry's bank account, because he will be picking up this bill, and I have no sympathy. Hypocritical prince.
Before the reunion, reports suggested Charles had offered Harry somewhere to stay on royal property, which could have been interpreted as another meaningful gesture toward rebuilding the relationship. A room on protected royal grounds would also have addressed at least some of the practical concerns surrounding Harry's visits. But according to reporting later discussed by Sunday Times royal editor Roya Nicker, that possibility disappeared remarkably quickly.
Last month, the King offered Harry a place to stay at Buckingham Palace.
Which is nice.
He's offered it before. It's been rejected for previous trips.
Okay.
He offered it again. The mood music, that all they got back from Harry was that he didn't want to do that. At the 11th hour last Saturday...
Why didn't you want to do it?
Wouldn't be secure enough, Buckingham Palace. Last Saturday, in writing, he rejected it. A few hours later, he changed his mind and accepted it, at which point the King and Buckingham Palace said, your time's up, you've missed the deadline.
There's no movement with the brother.
No movement with the brothers, and I don't foresee there being any movement there.
So even if and when William becomes king, will Harry even be invited to the coronation?
I mean, I've written previously that William doesn't want him at the coronation.
Wow.
And the timeline behind that apparent change is where this story gets even messier. The accommodation story makes the level of tension behind the scenes even clearer. According to Roya Nicker's account, Harry was offered a room on royal property, declined it in writing, then apparently reconsidered only hours later. But when he changed his mind, the offer was reportedly no longer available. Nicker herself suggested that response seemed somewhat petty, and there is a fair argument there. If Charles genuinely wanted to rebuild contact with his son, surely finding Harry a room should not have been impossible.
Firm, the royal family, the management of the royal family, and Harry and Meghan in regard to Harry's accommodation with this extraordinary row over Buckingham Palace and whether or not rooms were offered.
Yeah, well, the first thing, Mark, is I'm sure you're aware with Buckingham Palace, there's always rooms. There's always accommodation. We would never, ever put in the impression, when I worked there, that if somebody wanted a room, especially a member of the family, we're the ones that will give them the moment's notice.
But critics saw something else in that sequence. Trust had become so limited that once Harry rejected the arrangement, palace staff apparently treated the matter as settled. There was no open-ended invitation waiting around while plans changed, and even Nicker's wider assessment offered little hope for a full family reconciliation. Speaking about Prince William, she described a relationship damaged by feelings of betrayal and disappointment, suggesting there may currently be no realistic path back between the brothers. Whatever progress Harry might make with Charles, rebuilding trust with William appears to be an entirely separate challenge. Then the conversation moved into much more sensitive territory. Archie and Lilibet. The children themselves are not responsible for any of this, and speculation about their well-being should not become part of the controversy. The real debate is about how adult commentators interpreted their presence during the reunion. Sarah Louise Robertson of Digital Spy used the phrase "dangled like a carrot" when discussing access to the grandchildren. She acknowledged herself that the description sounded manipulative, but said that was how the situation appeared to her from the outside.
And I'd be shocked if they were settled in the Sussexes' favour.
Definitely. They are now leveraging the kids for clicks, for headlines, to boost their brand, and for money. Why else would you put your kids on
Robertson's interpretation was that Meghan's willingness to bring the children, participate in the reunion, and reportedly spend time around Camilla could potentially come with expectations in return. There is no confirmed evidence that Meghan actually approached the visit as some kind of transaction, however. That distinction matters. What followed was commentary and interpretation, not proof of a private strategy. Robert Jobson took an even harsher position, describing the idea of children being used within adult negotiations as pretty despicable. Angela Levin similarly argued that access to Charles's grandchildren could create emotional pressure during an already delicate period for the king. Three commentators on different programmes were essentially circling the same controversial theory, that seeing Archie and Lilibet carried enormous emotional value for Charles, and therefore their presence gave Harry and Meghan something powerful within the wider reconciliation process.
Meghan's astute. She's thinking, okay, plan A hasn't worked. I don't want to have to do it, but I'm going to have to try and swap to plan B. And plan B is we've got to curry favour again with the king because we may one day need to call on his services. So we need to be back in the king's good books. Now, how do you do that? You have the gift of grandchildren, Mark. And those grandchildren have been dangled like a carrot over the king's head.
But Andrew Loney brought the conversation back to the point that should matter most. The children have done nothing. They did not create the family feud. They did not give interviews, publish memoirs, negotiate security arrangements, or decide what information became public. Whatever problems exist between Charles, Harry, Meghan, William, and the wider royal household belong to the adults. That is exactly why suggestions that the children were somehow being used as leverage created such a strong reaction. It remains an accusation from commentators including Robertson, Jobson and Levin, rather than an established description of Harry and Meghan's intentions. Still, the fact that several royal watchers independently reached similar interpretations shows how suspicious the atmosphere surrounding this reunion had become. What should have been a simple image, a grandfather finally spending private time with his grandchildren, was instead dragged into arguments over security, access, trust, conditions and negotiation. And just as that controversy was dominating the royal conversation, another problem was unfolding for Harry. Because away from Highgrove and the family drama, his professional world was suddenly facing a crisis of its own. And while the Highgrove reunion was already creating enough controversy, Harry was dealing with another major setback away from the palace. His legal battle involving the publisher of the Daily Mail reportedly ended badly for his side, giving critics another opening to question where things were heading professionally. But royal commentators quickly became interested in something else: Meghan's absence.
Trying to get back in with the king because he knows he'll never be able to get back in with William. That's never going to happen. So once that door is closed and unfortunately the king passes, I don't think there's any chance of him getting back into the fold.
This is not a well man. This is not a well man. And it's shocking that Meghan is allowing this to play out publicly, although it could, I guess, work to her benefit in a divorce, because we're basically seeing this guy have a public mental breakdown, believing all these delusions.
She was not publicly beside Harry during some of the moments surrounding that difficult period, and critics interpreted that distance in the harshest possible way. Some suggested Meghan simply did not want to be photographed next to Harry while negative headlines were piling up. There is no confirmed evidence that this was actually her reason for staying away, and private scheduling or personal decisions could easily explain an absence. But Rupert Bell offered a much colder interpretation, describing Meghan as potentially the last person in the world Harry could rely on when his public image was taking a hit. Sarah Louise Robertson had already questioned the motivations surrounding the royal reunion from another angle. Her argument was essentially that Meghan could benefit from maintaining royal connections while continuing to build an independent life in America. In other words, critics believe proximity to King Charles still carries enormous value. It keeps Harry and Meghan connected to the institution that originally made their story globally significant, while allowing them to remain outside the working royal structure. Again, that is an interpretation, not proof that the Highgrove meeting was some calculated transaction. Biographer Andrew Loney has also questioned how sustainable Harry and Meghan's position in America will be long-term, suggesting they could eventually look elsewhere for opportunities. If that assessment proves accurate, repairing some connection with the royal family could become increasingly valuable.
And Harry's American dream, the Californian dream, hasn't worked out, hasn't gone to plan the way that they thought it was. The money hasn't come rolling in. It hasn't been a juggernaut of cash, which is what Meghan envisaged all those years ago when she was working out Mexico from the British royal family. They haven't had that avalanche of cash coming towards them, and the coffers are drying up.
And that brings everything back to Tom Bower and the explosive word that started this entire conversation: poison. Bower's position is that Harry should be the one making the effort to repair the damage with his family. He believes the responsibility for reconciliation should not fall entirely on Charles, especially after years of public accusations and private disagreements becoming global headlines. Yet, the story may not be finished. There has already been speculation about another possible opportunity for Harry to return in September. Whether that develops into another meeting with Charles remains unclear, but if another invitation does emerge, the reaction surrounding Highgrove guarantees people will be watching closely. Because Charles reportedly offered something that had become extremely rare in this family. Private time together after years of tension. What happened afterward is still being fiercely debated. Critics believe the publicity surrounding the reunion proved why trust remains so fragile.
I think he's probably pretty appalled. I think he feels his father's weak, that the only way to deal with Meghan particularly is to be tough. But we've got to remember there are two children here who have done nothing wrong and are entitled to see their relationship between a father and son and grandchildren is always very different to that between siblings. So I think they can each go their different way, and I think people will respect that. William, I think, is pretty stubborn. I think he feels pretty betrayed, particularly the way that Harry's talked about.
Others may see the meeting itself as evidence that reconciliation is still possible, even if the media circus surrounding Harry and Meghan makes every step harder than it needs to be. So now, I want your verdict. Was Highgrove a genuine attempt to repair this family, or did the reunion simply expose how deep the trust issues have become? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and share it with someone who follows the latest royal and celebrity drama. And make sure you subscribe because there are plenty more stories coming. Before you go, watch the next video you see on your screen for even more celebrity drama, controversies and stories everyone is talking about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.